Madridistas, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back. The Liga kicks off tonight with our beloved Real Madrid playing Mallorca. We're going to do something different this time, and I mentioned it to you guys on a couple of occasions. This time we're going to try something different. As you know, living in Madrid, you're surrounded by so many amazing Madridistas who have so much kind of insight and really interesting opinions and knowledge of the club. And I thought it would be fun to invite some of these amazing Madridistas onto the channel to sort of share their thoughts and kind of do a longer preview of the season, some of the key issues that we all discuss in the comment section. So I have found a perfect candidate for that. And today we're going to be joined by a young man by the name of Hugo Henderson. This young man is, English and Spanish, born, sort of raised in Madrid, the Madridista from head to toe, from, since he was wearing diapers, but speaks perfect English. His father is English, a dear friend of mine who I've known for many years here. But this kid knows his stuff. It's fantastic to talk to him. Even Goyo, my 81-year-old uncle, is sort of blown away when we go to matches with Hugo. He's got such knowledge of the club, the history, and I've always really enjoyed shooting the breeze with him. So we're going to welcome Hugo here. We're going to talk about the season, all the issues that we discuss in the comment section, and I hope you guys like it. It'll just be like a more elaborate version of the stuff that we talk about on this channel. So I hope you enjoy it. By all means, thank you for joining me. And let's get started with our chat with Hugo Henderson. Let's get started. All right, Madridistas, welcome back. Welcome back to the channel. And as I just introduced you guys, please welcome Hugo Henderson. Hugo, I know you're a busy man, so delighted to have you on. As I mentioned, I've always really, really enjoyed our conversations. You have such a plethora of knowledge about the club. So I thought we could get started talking about the one issue that everybody seems to mention in the comment section, sort of, every time I put a video out, is what are we going to do about the Rodrigo, Arda, Brahim situation? Everybody wants to see more of Arda Guler. Everybody loves Brahim. It's kind of a tricky situation. So do you have any thoughts on how Ancelotti is going to manage this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and obviously just wanted to say pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the invite. I mean, as you know, I've always been a massive Real Madrid fan since being very, very young, and one of the reasons why I have the chance and the luck of going to so many games is thanks to you. Obviously, you've invited me to a fair amount of games, probably over 100 throughout the years.
My pleasure.
So it's been a pleasure. But yeah, I mean, obviously it is a very, very big topic, and I mean, I think specifically Arda Güler is a really interesting prospect that obviously has had a great Euro Eurocopa with Turkey, scored an unbelievable goal, but just generally he's grown so much. He looks bigger and more muscular, and I think he's going to play a more important role this season at Real. I think the fact that Kroos has left could mean that Guler could actually drop into midfield, which I think would be his best position. I know so far for Real Madrid he's played out wide, mostly on the right, cutting in onto his left foot. But I actually think he's more of a number 10, more of a midfielder, because he's very good on the ball and he's very good at kind of finding the right passes and breaking the lines. So I think he could be an interesting option in terms of replacing Kroos to some extent.
Yeah, I had that. I mentioned that the other day as well, that there will be matches where Jude is not available, and there may be matches where we want to push Jude off to the left, which is something we've done many times. And I kind of agree with you that his characteristics as a player are just perfectly suited for a number 10. So I think if you kind of open up that possibility, and then I think Ancelotti, there was an interview yesterday, and he was saying that he's so concerned about the number of matches this season. He says we've never been in a situation where we have a Club World Cup after the end of the season, and what they're thinking about doing is giving 1 week holidays during the middle of the season to some of the players. So I think if you kind of factor in the holidays, you factor in that in some matches he will choose Arda on the right, and then matches where he could play number 10, maybe it'll be okay, because I just don't want the kid getting pissed off and getting frustrated.
No, I totally agree. But I genuinely think that now that Kroos has left, obviously very sad, but I do think that leaves a big gap for other players to fill it. And I know, looking back at the Supercopa final, which obviously took place last week, and I know we won it, and it was a good second half, Jude playing a key role. But I thought that throughout the first half, we were lacking a midfielder that wanted the ball, that dropped deep, that looked for the ball to kind of break those lines and bring the ball forward. And I think Guler could very easily be that man. I think it's either got to be Bellingham or Guler. So I think those are the best men to kind of replace Toni, which is obviously a tough job.
Yeah, and I mean, and let's not forget, there's going to be, whether we like it or not, there's going to be plenty of injuries and yellow cards and things of that nature. So I mean, I know it's an issue, and everybody is concerned about this, but I think we need to give this time, and maybe I think maybe the situation will sort itself out just by virtue of the interruptions and kind of the flow of the season. And now so in terms of Kylian, everyone sort of talks about, is he going to be disruptive, blah blah blah. The impression that I have is that this guy is more excited. He is like a kid the day before Christmas. I mean, this guy is so excited. I just feel like he's been liberated from a golden cage, and he projects so much enthusiasm. I have a feeling that he might play his best football. Do you have any views on Kylian's adaptation?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously, probably the most spoken about topic today regarding Real Madrid and just football generally. I mean, one of the best players in the world signing for the biggest club in the world. It's going to create a lot of opinions and generate a lot of conversations. I mean, I've got to be honest, I was quite pissed off at Kylian for basically after what he did to us and renewing his contract with PSG. But I do have a feeling that he's come to Real kind of understanding that he made the wrong choice. He didn't win the Champions League with PSG. And the only real way that he's going to reach the next level and potentially win the Ballon d'Or at some point in his career and be the best player in the world is by joining Real Madrid. And he just seems, as you just said, so happy to be here. He's always smiling. He's obviously I follow Real Madrid and all the players on social media. He's already posting about Real Madrid family, etc. So I think he's really kind of understood that he's joined a club where he's smaller than the club.
Yeah.
The club's bigger than him, and there's so many other players that are at his level as well because they're the best players in the world in their positions. So I think he's going to have a great future at the club.
Yeah, I also have the impression that he's blown away. I think he's blown away by the level of professionalism. I think at every level, you come to Real Madrid, from the moment you arrive, the way that they help you with your house, your transportation, your chef, the level of professionalism, the state-of-the-art equipment, the intensity and the excellence of the training, the people that do Pintus and his team. I think that he's realizes that he's just in a completely different level here. But he seems to be gelling quite well. The other day I saw him play on the left a little bit at the beginning of the second half, and they seem to be rotating a bit. Do you think it'll just be Mbappe and Vini trading in that number 9 position? Do you think that Rodrigo or the player on the right will come into the middle as well at any point?
I think there's going to be a lot of kind of floating across those 3 players if they're the ones to start in the front 3, because to be honest, I know that's been the case so far. It's been Mbappe, Vinicius, Rodrigo up front. But Ancelotti could easily decide to go back to a 4-4-2 with a diamond in the middle and choose to go with 2 out of Vinicius, Mbappe and Rodrigo, which would probably be, let's be honest, Vinicius and Mbappe. Maybe play Jude behind and have a 3-man midfield, maybe for those games that kind of require more hard work in the midfield. And imagine in those big Champions League games, like when you play against City, you probably need that extra midfielder to feel more comfortable when defending. So I do think they're going to float around a lot. And to be honest, Rodrigo's played as a false number 9 a lot of times with Real, and I think he does well there. He does well through the middle because he's technically probably even more gifted than Vinicius. So I think we're going to see them move around a lot.
Yeah, and in the And in that sort of pivot defensive midfield position, I thought Tchouaméni the other day against Atalanta, I thought he was a little bit off, especially in the first half. What you were saying, there was always a big patch of grass right in front of the central defenders, and we weren't able to get the ball out. And, that space that Toni occupied so well, Tchouaméni didn't seem to be there. He felt a little bit lost to me on the pitch. Do you have any view in terms of the Camavinga Tchouaméni situation in terms of the pivot position?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I've got to be honest. I do think losing Kroos is a bit of a problem because we don't really have a player of his characteristics at the club right now. I mean, as we just mentioned, Guler and Jude are technically very good on the ball. They can drop deep and receive the ball in those kind of Toni Kroos positions and drive forward. But they probably are better suited to playing more forward on the pitch.
Yeah.
And I don't really see Tchouaméni or Camavinga being that comfortable on the ball. They're not that kind of player. Neither is Valverde. I mean, I absolutely love them all, and they're just like physical powerhouses that run around for 90 minutes and win so many balls. But technically, they're not as good. So someone's going to have to fill Tony's boots.
Yeah. It's because the sort of range of passing that Toni had is just something that when he decided to leave, we talked about it on the channel. How do you replace a guy like Kroos? And I just can't think of any midfielders that have the range of passing that he did, because he could play short, obviously, and he could oxygenate the transition of the ball very well, but he could also just turn around and make a sort of 60-meter diagonal pass to a winger in full sprint, and the winger would not have to either break his stride or accelerate or decelerate. The ball would just go millimetrically to his foot. And I think that we're a little bit more limited now in terms of play, and that kind of worries me a little bit, because I'm not sure Jude has that passing in his arsenal.
I mean, I have a feeling that the only real players that do have that technical ability on the ball are Jude and Guler.
Right.
And I did see Jude play a lot of long balls against Atalanta specifically, and kind of come deep, receive the ball, drive forward with it. He's obviously going to be a different player compared to Kroos. He's not. He obviously doesn't have the same passing ability. I don't think anyone does in the world, but he's probably the closest player in terms of his ability on the ball. Now, I'm actually quite surprised that Real Madrid haven't looked elsewhere on the market for a player.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I think a very natural replacement and someone that's actually quite available and looking for a transfer, it seems like, is Joshua Kimmich, who I think could be a great replacement for Kroos. And he would come on a free, because if I'm not mistaken, his contract's running up. So I am surprised that we haven't even kind of looked at that option, but I think that just means that the team and Ancelotti and his whole, all the team members trust in both Guler, Jude, maybe even Ceballos, who I know he hasn't played a big role in the last few years, really, but I do think that he's very good on the ball and can play a role.
Yeah. And then, the other sort of massive hot topic that everyone is worried about is the center back situation. We all love Rudiger. Militao seems to slowly be getting back to form. But, these players can get injured. And Vallejo, I'm not sure that he has the consistent quality as a player to really be a permanent starter. I suspect Tchouaméni will have to play that position when he doesn't want. I know he doesn't like it, but I think he might have to do that from time to time. Do you think the club might bring somebody in sort of last minute?
I mean, it's strange because it seems like Ancelotti said no to new signings a number of times throughout recent press conferences, but Aymeric Laporte is heavily linked to Real Madrid. I'm sure you've read about it. And to be honest, I think he'd be a great option because he's a seasoned winner. Obviously, he's won with Man City, and he obviously won the Euro this summer. And I think he'd be quite happy to just kind of train and try and win that starting spot. But at the same time, he's currently playing it out in Saudi. So if he just signs for Real Madrid and stays on the bench and plays the minutes that he has to play, I think he'd be happy.
Yeah, I think the issue is sort of whether he can or can't get out of that contract. And I'm not sure what the details are. I think from what I've read, he really wants to come, but I just don't know if it's contractually feasible. Are there? I mean, what other candidates that for a while there, I thought maybe a guy like Hummels would make sense. Kind of a veteran that still has 2-3 good years left in him. But what other I just can't think of any other obvious candidates.
No, I mean, to be fair, I was actually gutted that Nacho left because
Yeah.
I think he was the perfect kind of third, fourth man centre back.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not forget that we do have David Alaba still
Yeah.
getting back from injury and he's suffering, but he is that third centre back currently. Maybe it's looking into our kind of youth academy and trying to go for someone that plays for Real Madrid Castilla.
Yeah.
In terms of elsewhere on the market, Sergio Ramos to come back, he's got no team.
Yeah, there were some. I did see some sort of whispers about that. Yeah, I think I'm not sure Florentino would go in that direction. I think if that were to happen, it would have probably happened already. Because isn't he? He's a free agent now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a free agent.
Wow. Yeah, well, he certainly knows the club and has the experience, but I mean, it was a real shame about Joan Martinez because we were so excited to see him. What's the deal with all the knee injuries? This is crazy.
I know. I mean, I think it just comes down to the amount of games that players have to play. It's just unbelievable. You're playing 70, 80 games a season. You basically don't have a big summer rest because every other year you've either got the Euro or the World Cup, and just players don't rest. They have long pre-seasons as well, having to travel. And it just seems like, obviously, their knees are suffering from playing so many games. I mean, obviously, start of last season, we lost Courtois, Militao and Alaba to exactly the same kind of injuries. And now Joan Martinez, it's sad to see. I mean, they're going to have to do something about the number of games because it's just completely ridiculous in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much money involved in this sport, and FIFA, is constantly, and UEFA trying to find ways of getting more of it. But the players are human; they have limits. I thought it was interesting that we may have been a bit lucky. Lenny Yodo didn't come, and we were all very, very upset about this, myself included. But then he, turns out he had a knee problem. I didn't know this. He apparently had an existing issue with his knee. I didn't know this.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And maybe that's one of the reasons that Madrid had a sort of ceiling in terms of how much money they would spend. For an 18-year-old that had never been an international with France, had never really played in major competitions. He's 18 years old. He's 12 months away from being a free agent. And on top of it, he has a knee issue. I mean, why would you pay more than 20 or 30, right?
I mean, I think that goes back to the fact that Uncle Florentino is just the best president in football history, probably even in sports history. I mean, the way he's managed the club throughout the years, and it almost seems that all the decisions he's taken recently have gone the right way. I mean, exactly the example you just mentioned. I know it's down to luck, but suddenly he gets injured and this whole knee problem comes out.
Yeah.
It seems like he just knows everything.
Yeah. It really is amazing because I was watching Man United, the other day and the day before, and you see that they bring in De Ligt, and you see the players that they bring in, and it always feels like they're just catching up with their problems. They're reacting to problems, whereas with Florentino, you always have the impression that he has a very long-term vision. The moves he makes are always designed with a kind of clear long-term plan in place, as opposed to teams that are just scrambling to sort of fix this and fix that.
100%. I mean, you look at all the players all the Brazilian youngsters that we've signed throughout the years, and even Guler and Endrick now, you're like, they're coming to the club a bit early, but actually he's happy with it. They just train, they learn from the best, and they wait for their opportunity, even if it takes them a couple of years to get into the starting lineup.
Yeah, that's my worry. I think Endrick will probably have more patience, but my worry is, I have a lot of Turkish viewers, subscribers, and not just the Turkish ones, but there's so much desire to see out of the play, and Arda is the one player that I think does demonstrate a little bit of impatience with sort of the limited minutes. So I hope they can control that. But I think Endrick seems like I think he's more patient. He kind of projects, he understands where he is, he's younger. I don't think he's going to give us too many problems. But how often do you see him playing?
It's a good question. I was trying to think about it. I mean, being totally honest, I was thinking, do I prefer having Joselu as our kind of backup striker or Endrick? And being frank, right now, I'd probably prefer Joselu because he's a different kind of striker and he's a seasoned goal scorer.
Yeah.
But it is true that these players, these Brazilian youngsters that we brought in, Vinicius and Rodrigo being the perfect examples, they turned into superstars and they're now worth hundreds of millions. And I do think that Endrick has something special. I mean, in the kind of friendly games that he played with Brazil, both against Spain and England, he scored right towards the end of the games to either win the game or draw the game.
Yeah.
And he was coming off the bench, so he clearly has something special. He's got that kind of special relationship with goal scoring. Yeah. I think he will play more than we think because he's the only 9 in the team, being honest. We don't have any number 9s, like pure number 9s. Even Mbappe, Rodrigo aren't, and Joselu's obviously left. So I do think he'll play, but I don't see him having many minutes in kind of the big games in the season unless players are tired and he comes on 70, 80 minutes in.
Yeah. And it's his first year. I think the first year, you know, if you're that young, I think you have to be prepared to just wait and be patient. Now, if you go on YouTube, social media, like, everybody's going crazy about the Real Madrid. I mean, I think this is one of the most amazing groups of players we've ever had. How do you think, this compares to sort of previous great generations?
It's a good question. I mean, I do think it's one of the best squads we've ever had because having Mbappe, Vinicius, Rodrigo, and Jude in the same team is, I mean, I never thought that could happen. I mean, they are 4 of the best, say 15 players in the world, and they're all playing for the same club. It's baffling, and they all can fit into the starting lineup because you could play them all together. And I do think they'll play together a lot. So it is one of the best teams. I mean, it is true that back in the day, when we had Casemiro, Modric, Kroos, and then you see up front, Bale, Benzema, Ronaldo. I mean, it's hard to say that that's not the best squad we've had because that's probably been the greatest midfield of all time, being honest. And Ronaldo, just himself, was capable of winning games by himself, and obviously he won 4 Champions Leagues with the club. But I do think it's closer in terms of ability than one would expect.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting to see. I mean, I have kind of a weary feeling. Last year nobody expected us to win the Champions League. 2 years before that, nobody expected us to win the Champions League, and I think that it kind of suits us when we're the underdog, so to speak. And I don't know, it kind of gives me a weird sensation now that everyone is talking about it. Everyone's talking, being in such a favored position. I don't know, that kind of creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think it's massively kind of benefited us being on the back foot in terms of our squad compared to Manchester City, for example, who's obviously been our main European rival over recent years. I mean, I've always thought that they had, at least over the last 3-4 years, they've had a better squad overall. It was deeper. They had almost like 2 players per position. But being honest, this season, I don't know. I mean, we're bringing in a player like Mbappe, who is, top 3 players in the world, could be the best player in the world. I'm not sure they still have the front foot. But I mean, I guess we'll see, because we'll most likely be playing them in one of those kind of final rounds.
It seems inevitable, right? It's crazy. Yeah, and I don't know. There was so much talk these last few years of. I get it. It really annoys me when there's sort of unfounded hype out there, and Guardiola. Yes, he's a wonderful manager, but I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, he. This is a little bit off topic, but he did very well in Barcelona because he had a group of players that was truly 1 in a billion. I mean, I could have managed that squad and they would have won the treble because it was just an exceptional crop. But then at Bayern Munich, I don't think he did particularly well. And then he went to Man City and spent billions of dollars, and in 8 years, breaking every financial fair play rule on earth. And he has 1 European Cup to show for it. I don't know. I don't think it's that impressive. Maybe I'm
No, I
biased.
mean, I think he's obviously hyped up massively because of what he achieved at Barcelona, which was obviously exceptional. But as you say, he had the best team, one of the best teams in history,
For sure.
and one of the two best players that's ever played football. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Messi was unplayable back then.
Yeah.
But I think that City's invested a lot of money, and I don't think he can be happy for winning one Champions League in so many years at the club. I know he's dominated the Premier League,
Yeah.
and fair play. I mean, it's one of the toughest leagues in the world, if not the toughest league.
Absolutely.
But I mean, there are a lot of seasons where Liverpool were just in and around them, and they could have won the league, and they were unlucky.
Yeah.
And also beyond Liverpool, they haven't really had big rivals. I know Arsenal have been a big rival last year, but that's it. The club's been dead for a number of years. Manchester United's been dead for about a decade.
Yeah.
Chelsea are just a complete, excuse the word, shit show. I mean, one year they're having a great season and competing. The next couple they're sat down in 10th position. So I don't think that they've had really, really top rivals beyond Liverpool. At least that's my opinion. So I do agree to some extent.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. And I was reading something the other day that I think one of the persons in the sort of football federation in England, in the FA, were saying that all of the issues surrounding Man City and financial fair play, the 115 allegations, they said that all of this will come to a head by December. That this will be decided upon by December. And I've been hearing some of the, UK, some of the English YouTubers that I follow. There is a real risk that something could happen here. Do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's a massive risk, and I really do hope that they pay for their crimes, as per se, because they're pretty blatant. But I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical about whether they're actually going to get fined, because they're one of the biggest clubs in the world right now. I mean, even if we don't like it, they are, due to recent success and the money they have.
Sure.
And it would just be such a big decision to really kind of fine them and take them the way that they deserve. So I'd love to see it, but I just don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and and they have deep pockets and very good lawyers, and I think they themselves filed a lawsuit against the FA. They're kind of playing tit for tat. But I mean, if you are part of the football infrastructure in England, and you are a supporter of Arsenal or Liverpool or Man United, I mean, it must be infuriating that a club can just show up one day and produce sponsorship deals out of thin air that are worth way more than anything that is commercially justifiable, and then just buy all the great players and dominate the league. I mean, it must be infuriating. I mean, I think there must be many people inside the FA that just are really upset about this. So, I mean, I still have some hope that we will see some form of justice,
No, I agree. And actually, what really reflects that is, I don't know whether you know this, but on the final Premier League day of the season, it was a toss-up between Arsenal and Man City.
Yeah.
And if City slipped up, Arsenal were going to win the league.
Yeah.
They'd win the league. And the FA, I can't remember whether it's the CEO or the chairman, whoever gives the trophy to a winning club, was actually at the Emirates Stadium. He wanted Arsenal to win it, so he was there. He wasn't actually at Etihad, which is obviously City were favourites to win it. And what made most sense would, hey, let's go to that stadium because we're going to give them the trophy. But he wasn't there, so he wasn't in the picture. Yeah. And I think that shows that they're obviously pretty pissed off at what City are doing.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, we have something similar going on in Spain with Barça and Tebas and all that kind of stuff. But getting back to Real Madrid, I think Courtois has been looking okay. I mean, he looks like he's back to form. But we're still not sure what's going to happen with Lunin, because I understand that we've made a contract renewal offer. It's been sitting on his desk for a couple of weeks. He hasn't signed it yet. He obviously wants to play more. Do you reckon he stays or goes, or what do you think?
I have the feeling that he's not happy with the minutes he currently plays, and therefore he'll probably look elsewhere. Because I mean, he had a great season for the club. He played really well. But being honest, Courtois is our starting keeper, and he is when he's in form and when he's fit and healthy, he's the best goalkeeper in the world. Sure. I mean, I've never felt as safe as I felt with Courtois. Yeah. Not even looking back at Keylor Navas, who was obviously a great goalkeeper, but he had a mistake in him. He wasn't that good aerially.
Yep.
And obviously looking at Casillas towards the end of his time, even though he's been the best goalkeeper in the history of the club and maybe one of the best, or if not the best in the history of football, he didn't look as confident towards the end of his career at Real. I think Courtois right now is the best keeper in the world, and we can't promise minutes to Lunin. So I think there was also chat of Kepa maybe staying at the club, and I'd be pretty happy with him as a backup goalkeeper. I mean, he hasn't had as good performances as Lunin, but he's a winner. I mean, he's won trophies and he's got a really good relationship with all the team members. So I can see him as a good option.
And so basically, when does the window end again? Is it the transfer window closes? Is it the end of August? I can't remember.
Well, and the thing is, it's kind of changed consistently throughout the years. It used to be end of August, then it changed to when the season starts. But I think now it's end of August again. It's a bit of a mess. But I mean, soon it will be closed off.
We'll figure that out. And then another one of the issues that a lot of my viewers talk about is that we have to, we have so many young players in really key positions in the midfield and up front, but Carvajal obviously is wonderful, but he's also 32 years old. Lucas Vázquez has done a great job, I think, stepping up when he's been called upon. But I mean, I do think realistically, we need to start thinking about the kind of longer term plan for the right back position. Do you have any thoughts on who might be a good candidate? Again, it's that nothing really strikes me as obvious.
No, I mean, I think it's been a number of years now where I thought we need to renew our fullbacks because they weren't dominating. And being honest, Carvajal has had one of his best seasons in his career, if not his best season. But I've been thinking with him for the past 4 or 5 years, he's kind of played really well throughout the decisive games, and he's basically kind of won his starting position for the next season throughout the key games. But there's been a lot of moments where I've thought he looked tired, he wasn't at his best level, and maybe if he's not facing the toughest competition, because obviously Lucas Vázquez has been a great fullback for the club, but he's not amongst the top 10 fullbacks in the world right now. I do think we need to renew that position. But there's been more chat regarding the left back situation. I mean, obviously Alphonso Davies looks like he's on the cards, and I do think he'd be an interesting option to work alongside Mendy, because I think Mendy is the best defensive left fullback in the world. No one gets past him. But attacking wise, he struggles. He doesn't seem to be very in sync with Vinicius. So having Alphonso Davies as a backup could make sense, and I think he's very much on the cards. Regarding the right back, there was talk about Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'm worried about his defensive abilities.
I totally agree.
Yeah, but I do think that maybe that would work similarly to what Mendy and Davies would look like. So you've got Carvajal for maybe the tougher games where you need a more defensive-minded fullback. And then when you really want to be dominating in possession, you've got Trent, and Trent can even play in other positions. So I do think he'd be an interesting option. But being honest, exactly what you're saying, I don't think that the right back position globally is kind of packed. I don't see that many top candidates.
No, it's true. It's like we don't have any Cafus. There's no Cafu, there's no Maicon, there's no Philipp Lam. There's no right back that you go, holy shit, this guy's the best. I mean, Hakimi I think is very good, but good luck getting anybody out of PSG. Especially, well, they're never going to sell anybody to us, I think, ever again in the history of football. That's a tricky one. I mean, I think Trent going forward, I really like him. I mean, the guy, I was just watching him yesterday. He puts some wonderful balls into the box. I mean, he's very fast. He can get forward. He can cross balls. He can dribble. But defensively, I mean, look what Bini has done to him in the last 5 years. I mean, Bini has just dismantled this guy. So, that does worry me a little bit.
I've actually always liked, and I thought Reece James from Chelsea was going to be a great option, but then he's always injured, and you can't bring a player to Real Madrid who's always injured. He looks like he's got everything. He's strong. When he's played against Vinicius and he's been in form, Vinicius wasn't managing to get past him, and that's one of the only cases when I've seen that. But he's always injured, so I don't see it happening. That's another reason why I think Joshua Kimmich would be a top option. I don't know why we haven't looked at him, because he can play as a right back. He's been playing recently as a right back at Bayern, and he's performed. But he's also he's a centre mid, and he's more of those kind of technical centre mids who's potentially not as good physically, not as powerful, but he's so good on the ball. He picks out the right passes. So I'm quite amazed that we haven't looked at him, given that our kind of transfer policy over recent years has kind of pick up key deals where you've got players on a free or with 1 year left on their contract and are good options. I'm surprised.
Yeah, no, because you're right. He does have that that sort of dexterity as a player. He can play different positions. And okay, we have to move on to another sort of hot topic that's kind of impossible to get around. Okay, the Ballon d'Or.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I did a whole video about some of the dubious things that have happened here and why they happen. I don't know what your view is. I mean, a lot of the media now are pumping up Rodri, and I think he's a wonderful player. But where do you see this going?
I mean, being honest, I think if you base it on successes throughout the season, which I think is what it's normally been based on, it should really be Carvajal. They shouldn't look beyond him. Yeah. Because he's won absolutely everything.
I totally agree.
And he scored key goals. I mean, he scored the key goal in the Champions League final, being a fullback.
I know.
So totally I don't really see how you're looking beyond a player who's won the Champions League, La Liga, and the Euros.
I could not agree more. And in the I actually mentioned that I think Vini should win it and will win it, and I think he would deserve it. But honestly, Carvajal, what does a man have to do to win this thing? Because he's done everything. I don't know. They should consider a format where they give a Ballon d'Or per line. I think, because otherwise, look at Sergio Ramos, never won one.
It's a joke. I mean, I do think they should look at him. Then other people argue, then someone, say Xavi, Iniesta, or Casillas, or Ramos should have won it when we won the 2010 World Cup. Spain did, and it was given to Messi. That was just because it was the biggest joke ever. Yeah. But I do think it should be Carvajal. If Vinicius wins it, obviously I'm not going to be angry. I do think he deserves it a lot. Sure. I also think Jude deserves it. Yeah. I know that it wasn't as spectacular throughout the second half of the season, but that's because he basically won the league for us in the first half of the season. He scored all the decisive goals, a goal a game for a player who wasn't a striker. So he could easily win it. And he scored a bicycle kick, let's not forget, for England in the Euros. So that we weren't knocked out, and then made the final, produced an assist in the final. I mean, he's done pretty much everything. MVP last week against Atalanta. So he should definitely not be overlooked. But I mean, I don't see it going beyond those three players. I know that Rodri's had an unbelievable season. Yeah. But I don't think he'd be the right winner.
Yeah, no, I agree. But this is down to journalists, so it's 100 journalists from around the world, and I just find that these people are very susceptible to narrative, to spin, and even to influence. I hate to be cynical, but if you're a journalist in Ghana, I mean, I could say Ghana like I could say any other country in the world. I mean, even sort of European countries. I mean, it's not impossible to sort of incentivize someone to vote a certain way. I mean, I don't know. It's very disappointing. In the case of Jude, I wanted to ask you this too, because his style, he's phenomenal, and his style of play, he exerts himself so much. I get a little bit worried about the physical side of Jude, because he works so hard and he defends so much. And even in possession, he's constantly fending off people with his body. It just seems to me that he's playing at the absolute limit all the time. And I kind of get worried. This guy's going to get injured, or he's going to get tired. I don't know. It's a concern.
I mean, I know what you're saying. I think he did look tired throughout the second half of the season, because he was having to play 90 minutes every 3 days, because he was scoring all our winning goals towards the start of the season, where we were kind of struggling a little bit to kind of produce as many goals. And Vinicius, if I'm not mistaken, was injured for a bit. So we really needed him. But hopefully this season, now that we've got probably I don't know whether a deeper squad, but we've got more options up front. Maybe he can play. I think he should play in the midfield 3, and maybe alongside Valverde and Camavinga. He doesn't have to kind of run as much and give as much of himself, and maybe rotate a bit throughout the slightly easier games, maybe the league games against the bottom kind of clubs.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's just kind of his natural style of the play and what's made him as great as he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he is also physically one of the most impressive players I've watched. I mean, he's just so big and he looks so nimble at the same time.
Yeah.
That maybe that's just what he is, and he won't get injured. Let's hope that.
Yeah, no, let's hope so. But I agree. It's a combination of power and he does remind me sometimes of Zizou, because he has this ability to spin in either direction, and you never know, and he can do it with such ease. You kind of don't know which way he's going to go. He has beautiful balance, incredible technique with both feet. And great vision, but then he has so much physicality. It's like so hard to get the ball off this guy. Like it's like you need to jump on top of him to get the ball off him. It's crazy.
I think we're in for one of the best midfielders of all time. Yeah. Being honest, I mean, I think he can do absolutely everything. He's demonstrated he can play as a false nine and produce 30 goal contributions, or probably even more. Maybe it was more towards 40. Yeah. And I think this season he's going to have to play in a deeper role if we don't sign anyone new, because we're going to need that. We're going to need that player who comes to receive the ball and drives forward from a deeper position, because our other midfielders aren't really that well suited to that. And I think that's probably going to be his best position. He's just so good defensively as well, as you just mentioned. Yeah. That I think that can really, really help the team.
And just one final question. Valverde, Fede, another one of those incredibly consistent players that seems to just physically push himself so much. And I've always noticed this, and I think we've laughed about this before, that Fede will have run 60 meters full sprint, and then the camera will go on his face, and he's not even huffing and puffing. He's not. It's like he's taking a stroll in a park. I mean, and I also worry, about how much he's exerting himself. We've been very lucky so far, but I don't know. Do you see any risk there?
I mean, I just think his aerobic capacity and his athleticism is one of the best in the world. I mean, he sprints so fast and so many times throughout games. I mean, he is my favorite player currently at the club. I just love watching him. I think he will end up being the club captain at some point in his career. Probably not too long, because I mean, Carvajal won't have that many years left. Modric will have one, max two, and Lucas Vázquez maybe is the only other player that's been at the club longer, and he doesn't have that long. And I think he'd be perfect kind of lead by example captain. But I do worry about that. I do think that we have players that can play in midfield and do well. I mean, obviously we've already mentioned Guler. We mentioned that Jude could be playing in that midfield three, so we could see a midfield, if you want to rest Fede, of Toni, Camavinga, Jude, which would be a great midfield as well. I think Ceballos, I personally really like him, and I think throughout key moments in previous seasons, he's been there to add value, and I think he can do that. And let's not forget, Modric is still here, and he won't be playing 90 minutes every game, but Modric can still add a lot of value, and is still unbelievably good on the ball. So I do think we have quite a deep midfield, so hopefully we can rotate him more than last season. Yeah,
exactly. Because last season I got the feeling that the guy didn't get a break. I got the feeling, somebody let this guy go home for 5 minutes. But listen, this was very, very cool. But it was the first time I've ever done this on the channel. But I can't thank you enough for doing this. And Hugo, are you in Granada right now?
Yeah, I'm currently in Granada. I'll be here for the next week or so, then I'm back up in Madrid. So, we live pretty close by, so I'm sure I'll see you around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Hugo, I can't thank you enough for doing this for us, and I know everybody out there really enjoyed listening to you. So, listen, thank you so much. Next lunch or dinner on me.
Not at all. Honestly, I've loved being on the channel. You're doing a great job. I really enjoy your videos, so keep it going. And obviously, you're having a lot of success, and people are loving it. So, keep pushing, and it's been a pleasure.
All right, Hugo, thank you so much, brother. I'll see you very soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care, brother.